Hi everybody, my name's Mark Beckett. I'm a professional woodturner based down here in Devon. You might know me as the Gentleman Woodturner. I'm here today with Woodworking Wisdom at Axminster. They very kindly invited me down to take over their workshop and make a mess. So what we're going to do today is a very simple bowl, dish. It's going to have some texturing around the outside. I'm going to do some airbrushed painting. A nice classic OG shape on the back. I've got a piece of quite dense sycamore that was selected for me by Colwyn Way, so if it all goes wrong, it's his fault. So the first thing I want to do is drill a hole in the center with a lip and spur bit. The drill corresponds with the worm screw. And then we're going to mount this by hand. You should never use the lathe to mount the wood. Do it by hand, it's safer. And cinch it up so that it's nice and flat and it registers on the plate on the chuck. Okay, so we've mounted it on the chuck on a worm screw, and because this is only a 10-inch blank, I'm quite happy that it's safe and secure, so I'm not going to bring up tailstock support. Now what I like to do when I turn bowls, even with a pre-prepared blank, I like to face off and give myself a clean surface. So that's what I'm going to do to start with. Because we've just mounted the piece of wood, we're going to go lathe down to 0, turn the lathe on and bring it up to speed. So I'm just going to do a nice simple draw cut. Drop the tool rest a little bit because that's a bit too high for me. That's fine. And now we're going to make it round. My intention today is not only to try and make a really nice bowl, but also try and make as much mess as possible. There we go, that's flat, that's round. Happy with that. Next thing we want to do is mark up for holding this when we turn it around. And I'm going to use a tenon on this, which is going to be sacrificial. I've already set my calipers using the speed sizer for the C-jaws that I've got on the SK114. And that tells me what I've got to play with regards to turning the bottom of this bowl. So I'm just doing a series of pull cuts to start establishing the shape. Form this tenon. So that's the foot created. Now, it's almost sort of contractually obliged that I have to use the Colwyn Way signature skew at some point in every project. Otherwise he gets very upset. So I'm just going to use this to clean up the tenon. What that's done is that's given me parallel sides on the tenon and a flat surface for the front of the jaws to register it. Now this tenon might just be a little too thick, so I'm just going to skim the front face off. Perfect. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to establish a rim about 6 or 7 millimeters in from the edge, and I also want another line about a third from the center of the bowl. So that's a third, that's a third, that's a third. And what I'm going to do is basically connect the dots. So where's this line here? So all I need to do is go from this line to this line. Series of draw cuts. And this is just waste removal. Getting a bit of a gap between the tool rest and the bowl. Let's just move the tool rest in. There we go. So what I want to do now is halfway between these two lines, which is about there, just mark another line, and that's going to be the forming of the OG. Now the first part of this OG is going to be a concave curve, and I'm going to go against the grain. So I'm going from the rim to this point here. That's going to pick up all the grain and give me some tear out because I'm going in the wrong direction. But I will clear it up at the end with my finishing cuts. And now I want to go from here to here and do a convex curve, which I'm going to do with a push cut. And that's a nice, classic, shallow, subtle OG. Lovely. So I'm just going to do a couple of little shear scraping cuts, just to tidy it up. Handle nice and low. When you do that cut well, you get these very fine little angel hairs. And that's a nice smooth surface, ready for sanding. Right, so that's the bottom shaped. I'm happy with that shape. not very many tool marks at all. So what we want to do now is start some sanding. I'm going to start with 120. Dust extraction is going to go on. Always take your time with these lower grits, because they're the one that does the most work. Also, stop periodically, have a check, make sure that you're getting all the marks off. There's just a faint line around here, tells me where I need to work a bit more. And we're going to go up to 180. It's looking good. And 240. Let's have a look at that, see how that looks. Very happy with that. That's finished up really nice. So now we can apply some cellulose sand and sealer. By the feel of things, this isn't my sanding sealer, but it feels like it's been thinned, same that I thin mine. And the reason I thin my sanding sealer is exactly the same reason Colwyn does his. It penetrates into the wood faster and further. It actually dries quicker, and it gives a better preparation for whatever finish I'm going to choose to use. That's one there. So then we just wipe off the excess, and we let that dry for a minute or so, and that'll be ready for the wax that we're going to put on it. Right, so that's dried off now, and we're going to use some Hampshire Sheen microcrystalline wax as a base for this. Just work it in. A little goes a long way. Don't need a lot of this. Less is more with the Hampshire Sheen products. Bring the speed up again and just buff this in. Gentle pressure. And that's the base finished. Nice, simple, clean lines. And then you can see a very subtle OG. So you've got the convex curve and a concave curve out to the rim. And this foot is going to be sacrificial. We'll take that off at the end. So now we want to turn this round. And sometimes this is the hardest part of the whole thing. Now it's nice and smooth. Getting it off the worm screw. And don't ask me how I know this, but when you're taking bowls off of a worm screw, keep your hand on the bowl the whole time, because it's very easy to drop. I've only done it half a dozen times a week for 6 years. Right, so we're going to put this in the jaws. When you're mounting the bowl back in and you're holding it back in the chuck, press in the center press in the center, not like this, because if you're doing this, you could be applying pressure out at the rim. If you're pressing in the center, it's pushing it into the chuck. Nice. Good. Pleased with that. That's got no run out. So, again, I want to give myself a clean canvas. I hit my bulk out somewhere. There it is. Clean canvas, clean sheet of paper to start again. So just draw the gouge back towards me. Sit. Now I'd like to establish now where the rim's going to be. So obviously I need to give myself enough of a rim. I think maybe a little bit more. So that's going to be the inside of the rim, and I want to give myself that's going to be the border when I start doing the texturing. So what I want to do now is I like to make the rim slightly rounded. So I'm going to round it down to the edge. Move the tool rest, give myself a bit more of an angle. Okay, so that's now got a slight dome on it. This section is going to be the section that I'm going to texture and colour. And I'll put an embellishing line around the outside to border where I'm going to texture. I'll do that next. And again, we'll break out Colwyn's skew. And that's my no-go line. I don't go past there with the texturing. Right, so we've turned the bowl, turned the outside, we finished it, sanded it, we created the rim that we're going to texture. I'm going to texture it now with this ancient piece of kit. This is an Axminster white flex drive. It's foot operated. Brilliant piece of kit, so that's going to hang down there. Now this is a long, slow process. It's got a Kutzall burr, carbide burr on the end. I can operate the speed depending on how far I press the pedal. Now I'm going to have the dust extraction running, and I'm going to be wearing a face mask with a filter on it, and Steph is on the cameras over here. She's wearing a dust mask as well. So I'm going to make sure that we're both protected, because this thing throws up a lot of dust. Trying to be random is impossible. Don't try to be random, and you'll end up being random. If you try to be random, you'll end up being uniform. It's very, very difficult. Being random is one of the hardest things that we do as woodturners. So what I want to do now is just go over this with a bristle brush. There's two types I use. I either use a brass bristle brush or a polyamide brush that I use in a drill, just to get rid of the fuzzies that are created by using the burr. So we turn the lathe back on. You may have noticed I turned the lathe off. Whenever I'm doing texturing on the lathe, as a habit, I tend to turn the lathe off because the temptation to turn the lathe on for some reason is great. So just spin the lathe up about 500 RPM. So you can use a brush on a drill, or you can use a wire brush by hand. There you go. That's got rid of all the fuzzies. Most of the fuzzies. Some you can just get rid of by doing it by hand. But that's going to be painted anyway. And your imagination is your only limitation. Alright? Right, so we've done the texturing. And now we're going to spray some colour on it. And this is the chestnut spirit stain. Bring it back there. And I'm going to use green. I'm going to use just two colours on this. Green as the main colour. And I'm going to use black just to give a bit of a shadow effect. And that's probably way too much paint or stain. And until you put the lid back on, you have to be very careful. You're going to drop it everywhere. Right. So I have the lathe on, quite slow. I'm just going to turn the dust extraction on. A little bit more. Now I don't want this solid, I want it quite opaque. And you notice I'm spraying from the centre out to the rim this side. The reason for that is not only is the extraction pulling the vapour away, but also limits any overspray that comes around the back of the bowl because it's going in this direction. If I was spraying here, coming this way, I'd get overspray on the back of the bowl. And as it stands, there's nothing on the back there now at all. Okay, so we've done the green. Now we're going to do the black. Now I haven't cleaned the green out. I've just poured the black in because we're going to be blending. I only want a shadowed line just towards the outside so you can still see the green, and then that blends to the black, so I don't mind if the black and green mix. And it'll be quite far back, about 6-7 inches, and that's it. Literally that's it, just to give that black accent as a shadow. I don't want a lot of black on there. And that's the colouring done. Right, so we've coloured. What I'm going to do now is hollow out the inside of the bowl. I'm going to get rid of some of the bulk, and then I'm going to come back, and this detail around the corner here, I'll work on that, but I'm just letting everything settle and dry first. Let's get some of the mass out of the middle. That's pretty much the depth that I want. Yep, pretty much the depth I want. So I'm just going to work on this rim. Where possible, I like to try and do that in one fluid motion. So that runs all the way down from the rim detail here, down through into the centre in one go. There you go. So now it's just going to be sanding and applying a finish to the centre. So we've hollowed the centre out, got the shape we want. We've done all the colouring, done all the texturing. The outside, the back is done. All we're left to do now is sand. So I'm going to turn dust extraction on. Lathe at about 700 RPM. Next grit. That's the inside sanded. Bit of blue paper. Just to get rid of all the dust. There we go. Looks alright. So we're just sanding sealer, same as we did on the outside. Just want to try and be a bit careful. We don't want to get too much, or any, if we can help it, on the paint. This stuff's great if you got a cut on your finger. You'll soon find out where it is and how much that hurts. And I've just found out. And again, we just let that flash dry a second. Any microcrystalline wax is fine. Hampshire Sheen, Chestnut, Axminsters. Bring the speed up. Which one do we want to go to? That one. There you go. Nice finish. That way. Green with a black shadowed. And that's the most of the bowl finished. We just need to take the foot off now. And we'll do that in a second. So what we're going to do is take the base off using a pressure plate. That's held on with a ring that fits on the C-jaws, on the dovetail. Let's do that up. Bring the bowl across. Give myself some space. Now I do just have the remnants of my centre mark left. So we've got it mounted on a pressure plate. Tailstock's up, holding against the pressure plate. I'm going to take this foot away with a 3/8 spindle gouge. Everything's locked down into position. Now I'm just going to slow the lathe down a little bit. This is my preferred method of removing the nib. One hand on the gouge, one hand on the stop button. And as soon as the nib stops moving, you've cut through, you've stopped the lathe, and the nib comes away for you to throw on the floor. And then all we have to do is sand the base, and that would be finished. So you could sand that by hand, with a drill, or with an arbor in the chuck, just holding it and sanding that away, and that would be done. And there we have one finished coloured textured bowl with a nice classic subtle OG in sycamore. Right, well that's it for me. I've been Mark Beckett, and I hope to continue to be Mark Beckett, also known as the Gentleman Woodturner. Thank you so much for Woodworking Wisdom for inviting me down and letting me make a big mess in their workshop. If you've liked what you've seen, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and share if you don't mind. It helps poor little old Axminster out. Thank you ever so much for watching me turn this bowl. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. Thanks for now. Bye bye.